welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I'll be giving you guys 10 book recommendations that I think all high schoolers should read. And since it is summer now, people will have a lot more leisure time, so you guys should really make good use of that time and read some books to get more educated. If you guys want to have more information on these books and where to buy them, I have a written form of this video on my blog, which you can check out right over here. And yeah, so without further ado, let's get started. The first book that I will be introducing is called The Power of Habit. I actually read The Power of Habit myself not that long ago, and I found it really revolutionary. I think there's a lot of really wise content in that book, and I think that everyone should read it just so they can have really good foundations to build successful habits for their high school career. At its core, the book basically says that success is a culmination of positive habits. So if students are able to grasp how to maintain and build positive habits earlier on, as well as how to break off negative habits, they'll be able to find more success in their personal life, their academic life, etc. And going into the future, after I read this book, I was able to understand how habits truly work in our mind, and this has motivated me to take more hold of my own lifestyle and kind of tackle my habits and really look at the interworkings of my mind. I think that the best part about this book is the appendix section, because basically what the author does is he goes step by step and he uses a really specific niche example to demonstrate how to build habits and break habits. So my recommendation is that if you're only able to read one book off of this list, please read this first book because I think it will really be beneficial to you. Let's move on to number 2. So our second book is The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. I included The Boy in the Striped Pajamas on this list because personally it is one of my favorite books. I really like the genre historical fiction, and I think The Boy in the Striped Pajamas is a good way for a lot of readers to get a glimpse of historical fiction. I think that everyone should read at least one Holocaust novel during high school, and this was one of the, first Holocaust novels that I read, and I found it really profound. The writing is very simple and beautiful, and I think that it really demonstrates the innocence of this young German boy called Bruno, which the story is told through the eyes of. This novel also has a movie counterpart that was released in 2008, and if you know Asa Butterfield, he's a British actor. I really like him. He basically plays Bruno in this movie, and yeah, it's really awesome. So if you guys read this book, you should definitely go check out the movie afterwards. The third book on my list that I'll be sharing is called The Help. The Help is basically talking about the Black woman who worked in white households in around like the 1960s, pre kind of civil rights movement era. And I think that The Help is really profound because it celebrates women, it celebrates equality, it celebrates community. And I think reading this novel has definitely, helped me reflect more on myself as well as those around me in my community. My biggest takeaway from this novel is just to be brave, and I think the novel is very empowering for a lot of women. I really like the way the author writes as well, and I think she's very quirky, but her writing is also moving at the same time. So yeah, it was a really great read. I think you guys should definitely read this novel because it really shows a less talked about side of racial inequality, and yeah, it really surprised me. I learned a lot of new things through this novel. Number 4. So the next book on my list is actually one of my favorite books of all time, and it's called When Breath Becomes Air. When Breath Becomes Air is a memoir that is written by a dying neurosurgeon called Paul Kalanithi. And basically, Paul, he was studying at Stanford to become a neurosurgeon, and he finished his residency. He was about to become a neurosurgeon around the age of 35. He finds out that he's actually suffering from stage 4 lung cancer. And the book is basically just him reflecting on life and kind of coming to terms with his illness, as well as giving a lot of different wise words of wisdom to other people who still have a lot of time left to live. I think that his writing style is very beautiful, very elegant, and very humble as well. I think it's such a shame that such a wonderful person is gone from the world now, but his words will live on through his novel. Moving on, number 5 on our list is The Handmaid's Tale. And The Handmaid's Tale was honestly a really fun book for me to read. I found it super intense. The Handmaid's Tale is a dystopian novel where in the future, America is taken over by a totalitarian government and all women are basically oppressed. Women are only valued for their ability to reproduce. And they basically become classified by different ranks, and it talks about how this came to be as well as what the oppression these women are suffering through. And it's a really intense read, and I think a lot of the writing is really spectacular. It's very vivid and almost haunting at times. This book definitely leans towards the side of darker fiction, and it's very thrilling, yet the writing is also full of biblical imagery and a lot of vivid metaphors. Also, it's widely popular, and there was also a Netflix TV series that was made after this novel, as well as in 2019, Atwood will be releasing a sequel called The Testament, I think? Yeah, so keep your eyes out for that. Number 6 on this list is Eleanor and Park. Eleanor and Park is actually a really heartwarming read, and it's on the side of romance. I would call this kind of like the Romeo and Juliet of modern fiction. I think everyone who's into romance would have read this novel before. It's really sweet, and I think a lot of teenagers will be able to relate to it and learn from it. It's about basically how there's this Korean guy and this redhead, and they're so different, but they learn a lot from each other and about life and about families and about communities, etc. I think everyone will be able to take something away from this novel, and at the end of the day, it's just really heartwarming. Number 7 on this list is The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F. This book is basically a self-help book. It's very funny, and it has a lot of good content and wise words from Manson. I think that every high schooler should read this because he kind of teaches you like what to care about and what not to care about. It's more about valuing your life and figuring out what you want rather than just living it, I guess. And personally, I think that this can be applied directly to popularity. And I think for teenagers, this is kind of something that a lot of us struggle with in our high schools. But yeah, at the end of the day, everyone's the same. Like, no one's really that special. You're not special enough to be picked on, humiliated, embarrassed. You're not special enough to be celebrated either, or like the class clown, you know? It's just everyone's the same, and kind of realizing that takes a burden off your shoulders and you can just learn to be you. Moving along, number 8 on this list is To Kill a Mockingbird. And I think most of you guys have probably read this book already because it's taught in a lot of high schools in America, especially during freshman year. That's when I read it. And I think To Kill a Mockingbird is honestly such a great novel. It's so heartwarming and it's very wise, but I think it's also very sensational in the sense that it is one of the most profound books that discusses racial inequality. And yeah, I think there's a very good reason as to why it's so widely popular. It also deals with other mature topics such as like racism, rape, murder, crime, gender roles, etc. Reading this book was such an eye-opening experience for me, and I think it's also because it was one of the very first books that I really analyzed deeply. So to this day, I really respect the writing, and I think Atticus is still my moral hero, and I really love the innocence of Scout, and I miss Boo. Number 9 on my list is The Alchemist, and I think The Alchemist is just such a wonderful story. I really appreciate the beautiful storyline. It's basically about like this shepherd that finds out that he has a personal legend, a personal destiny, and he basically gives up everything that he knows to go on a quest to fulfill his personal legend. And throughout his quest, he meets a lot of different types of people, learns a lot of new things, and at the end of his journey, he meets this guy called the Alchemist. Well, he basically just meets an alchemist, and it is only from him that he really learns what life is truly about. I would call it a self-help book in disguise because it has so many different elements of fantasy, of fiction, and it's very colorful and vivid, but at the end of the day, it's really about that simple moral that hits home. After reading The Alchemist, I myself actually sat down and I did some more personal reflecting to figure out what I really wanted out of life and what my personal legend is. Number 10, last book on this list, is Crime and Punishment. Crime and Punishment is a book that I read in class this year during senior year, and I thought it was a very fun, a very intense and laborious read. The book is definitely very lengthy, but I really enjoyed it, and it's very fast-paced. There's a lot of action, and it basically just explores the morality of crime as well as how to redeem yourself and what type of punishment should a crime deserve. I really loved the writing, and I thought even though it's complicated, it's so fast-paced and thrilling, breathtaking, very exhilarating, and sometimes I was just reading it and I couldn't stop reading even though I was already tired from reading so much, but I just really wanted to know what happened. And yeah, I guess that's what makes a good book, right? There's a lot of discussion of sin, redemption, guilt, and at that time, two major schools of thought were also Christianity and nihilism, so it kind of examines how these two different approaches really view these ideas. Yeah. So that will be all for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and really let me know if you read any of these books before, and if you have not, what books you would like to read this upcoming summer. And you can check out my blog again over here. I have a full reading list up there, and you can find where to get all these books as well as a more detailed explanation of each right there at aliciawooforyou.com. Anyways, thank you guys so much for sticking through with me today, and make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you next time. Bye!
We were trying